Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
With MarketSurge, most entrepreneurs say they want freedom, but then they build on them for everything. Today's guest didn't talk just about delegation, he rebuilt his entire business around it. Chris Kille scaled and exited a multi-seven-figure company by fixing what most founders get painfully wrong, hiring virtual assistants without building real systems. He went from burned out, buried in admin, and stuck doing $10 an hour tasks to building a lean, high-performance team powered by global talent and walking away with a life-changing exit, the dream. Now he helps founders stop being the bottleneck, install real operational systems, and actually build a business that runs without them. Chris doesn't do fluff, he builds structure. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, let's talk a little bit about your background and tell us how you got here. What was the breaking point where you realized, if I don't fix this business of mine is going to own me? Where was that point?
Yeah, I think I actually lived there at that breaking point for 4 or 5 years. I had a credit card processing business, right, that I was in for about 20 years before I sold it. And about 12 or 13 years in, I really started to, I was making decent money. I was making a couple $100,000 a year, which was good. Solopreneur, doing everything myself. And I wanted to grow. Like, I wanted to scale. I wanted to, make more money. I wanted to be able to get bigger so that way I could sell at some point. But I just I was caught in the grind, and I was having a very, very hard time finding a team that I could afford. Right, I didn't want to give up my lifestyle, and so because of that, it was either give up your lifestyle and hire good employees, or keep your lifestyle and keep doing what you're doing. And I chose to maintain my lifestyle, but I grew to hate my business, and it wasn't so much about, like, I love the industry, I love everything about it, but I grew to really not enjoy the back end and the fulfillment and the customer service part. I'm not sure how familiar you are with credit card processing, but
Medium.
most people aren't. Most people aren't very stoked on their rep, right? Most people, it's a fee that's necessary to go by business, but nobody, I'm not making friends when I walk into a room. That's for sure.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I lived in that for 5 or 6 years where I was just miserable. That was when I learned about, I was at a business conference in South Carolina, and I learned about virtual assistants and what they could do. And, that's kind of where my life changed.
That's awesome. Okay, so you started working with virtual assistants. I know in some literature I've read about you, you say that hiring a VA isn't the solution. Obviously, that's a provocative statement. What does that mean? VA isn't the solution.
I mean, you got to have the systems and processes in place, or it's going to fail no matter what. A lot of people, they'll come to us and they'll say, "Hey, I need a VA." And I'm like, "Cool, for what? Right? What's this VA going to be doing?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know. Like, things." And going into any hiring relationship with that, it's going in without a plan essentially, and you're just going to figure some stuff out. Eventually, they're going to run out of things to do. And so, without clear structure, it's hard to get a great person on the team. It's hard to get a great person to stay. But then also, you're not just hiring somebody to run errands. If they're going to make an impact in the business, there needs to be structure around what it is they're doing.
Okay. I think this goes to the point of, like, why delegation fails for most founders. Do you think that's a skill that could be developed, like the delegation skill, or is it more than that? Is it like process development? What do you think is the gap there that needs to be developed?
Yeah, the very first thing that we see, and this is 95% of people that I talk to, if they have a history of hiring, then it's not as prevalent. But if you're newer in the game, or this is your first couple of employees, you don't have a big team underneath you, the founder always struggles to let go. Like, you got to give it up. And, it's because they've probably tried a little bit before, maybe with somebody else, that they kind of tiptoed into it and then took it back right away because the person didn't do it right exactly the way that they could. And, look, you're the one who started the business. Most of the time, you're the one who's running, who's doing everything. And really, it's very high likelihood that no one's going to be able to do as good as you, right?
Yeah.
But that's the trap. That's the bottleneck that they get stuck into, because there's only so much that you as the founder can do, right? Eventually, that you have to delegate some stuff if you want to be able to focus on bigger things like growing. And, the biggest hurdle that we have in the beginning is just getting to, hey, you got to let it go. You got to remember 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome. And so, it's just, that's the biggest part. And then we can worry about systems and things like that afterwards, but just getting them to let go of the reins, even just a little bit, is kind of tough.
Okay. Are there things that like pretty typical of founders or business owners that they should delegate, or conversely, do you have any examples of things that they absolutely should not delegate?
So what we always start, the lowest hanging fruit that we have, we do a time study, which is like, hey, I need you to write down what you've done every hour of the day for the last 7 days, or you do it as you're going. Great way to find out where waste is. And most people, they have no idea how much time that they waste, myself included. I do one once a quarter. And
Okay.
it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much time I waste. But then, we find out what the stuff that they don't like to do that needs to be done. That can be delegated. Delegate or delete, and that's kind of what it is. Like a lot of stuff people do doesn't even need to be done. You just not do it, and
Okay.
it's not going to affect anything. But typically, the lowest hanging fruit, right? If we're hiring like an executive assistant for a founder, is going to be email. Just getting
Mhm.
in there in the inbox. You don't have to respond to them. They don't have to reply. It's not. They're just somebody coming in and organizing it. So that way, when
Mhm.
you open your inbox, however many times a day you do it. I do it once. I used to check it 100 times a day. I now check my email once a day. And I go in, my executive has assistant has everything outlined. They have everything organized. And like, I only focus on a certain subset of the inbox that's tailored just for me. And I go through that. I'm usually in and out of my email within 20 minutes.
Okay. So you're saying if I need to get a hold of you fast, I should text you. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, so EA's in there all the time. She sees them as soon as they come in. So, and we've got a relationship where she can respond to some things, but
Okay.
but yeah, text is
Okay.
very easy.
Awesome. Okay. So you have a formal engagement. What does it look like in the first 90 days? So you mentioned you do the time study, and that seems like a great approach. What else is involved in this? So you're starting to build, where's the waste? What's next?
Yeah, so a lot of times, what we'll do is there's usually only a couple areas of focus that are pretty consistent in most people. One of them is going to be lead follow-up, email organization, just general executive assistant type things. You can do accounts receivable. There's all kinds of different things that can be done. But what we do is during our discovery process, we actually help people build out a 90-day roadmap. So it's funny that you say 90 days because we want people to be able to actually track the progress and see the deliverables as they're coming through. At the same token, we want to make sure that people's expectations are in alignment because sometimes you'll run into somebody that's like, I expect this person to be able to do everything on day one. And it's like, that's, you gotta ease into it. We gotta onboard the person first, gotta show them where the bathroom is, before they're answering the phone. So yeah, so that's something we put together a 90-day roadmap.
Okay. So talk a little bit about the VAs that you hire. So, VA that can apply to a wide variety of skill sets. Are they typically offshore? What's like a rough description of the profile of a VA that you're working with?
Yeah, so for us, we tend to stick primarily to administrative and operational
Okay.
virtual assistants.
Okay.
We get into a little bit into marketing, but that's more of like a lead follow. Most business owners, when a lead comes in, they're not very good. The speed to lead, getting a hold of the person actually booking the appointment, that's something we're very good at. And my whole team is based out of the Philippines. But there are VAs for everything, right? I mean, if you want a marketing, if you want a sales, if you want a computer coding, if you want a copywriting, right? If there's a skill set that can be done remotely, you can find a VA to do it.
Okay. And when you yourself, you had your exit, I don't know if it was 100% virtual team, but maybe talk to that. And what was like the organization? Did you have VAs supervising other VAs? How did you have that hierarchy? How did that look?
I did. Yeah, so I had one domestic salesperson,
Okay.
and then I had four VAs from the Philippines.
Okay.
And yeah, and so actually, when the company who bought me looked at my books the first time, they thought it was a mistake. They thought we were lying because of how lean we were. That like the productivity that we were able to put out, against the number of team members that we had, and then obviously the salaries was they thought it was a mistake at first. They actually before we closed, they say this is the leanest business we've ever acquired.
Did they inherit your VAs as well, or did you?
Yeah, whole
Okay.
team came. Yeah,
That's
even the Americans, or even Olivia was her name. She went over with them. They're still. This was just over a year ago. We It's actually a year and a month ago. We closed on January 12th, but it was like a little over a year ago. The entire team went. The entire team is still there. That business is up 30% since they bought it. It was a great deal for everybody.
congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
Um,
great.
you talk a little bit about some of the literature I've had from you about the difference between being an operator and a CEO. And you've touched on this a bit. How do you make that jump to be the CEO from being an operator? It's the big difference.
Yeah, I mean, operators involved in everything. That's the word of it is you're operating the business. And I was stuck there for a really long time. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. My company now, EO, it's ran 100% in the Philippines. I wanted to prove that it can be done. So every single one of my employees in the Philippines. I'm the only one here. But I still get sucked into the day to day sometimes too. So I don't want people to think that I'm just like sitting here going, oh my, and I don't want to remove myself from the business, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what I don't want to replace myself. I like this job. You know what? That's awesome, and that's you can step away at the level that you want. But for me personally, I find that I am much more productive to the business and the rest of my team. I show up better for everybody in my life when I can focus on the things that I like to do and the things that I'm good at. And some of the stuff that I'm not good at is, being down in the weeds and the day-to-day operations, making decisions that really don't, not making major decisions. I want to make the big decisions, right? I want to be able to go out and shake hands and kiss babies and pick up, big accounts and, pick up partnerships and go on podcasts and shoot silly videos on my phone. And, that's the kind of stuff that really gets me jazzed up, not sitting in meetings all day. And so the biggest difference between an operator and somebody who's CEO visionary level is what it is that you're actually doing. If you're still hands on everywhere, then you're an operator.
Mm. Yeah. So you probably have to elevate these virtual assistants to a level where you can really trust them. How do you build that trust? These are people that you don't meet in person, that you, at least not on a regular basis. How do you build that trust or make them trustworthy? Help
Yeah, I
develop.
mean that all comes down to screening initially, right? So we don't hire anybody who's green, nobody right out of school. That's something that there are a lot of companies that do, and that's great, right? There's a need for everybody. Everybody has to get experience somewhere. From us, we tend to pick a more employee whenever they come in. Somebody that's got a little bit more experience. That also means that they've got a longer work history, so we can go back and we can check. Obviously, we do criminal background checks, but those only go so far, right? And just like here in the States, just because somebody's got a clean background doesn't mean they haven't done anything in the past. They just haven't gotten caught. And it just comes down to the character screening and and being able to check references and just going by your gut too. Some people you just get the ick from and we don't hire them.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I've had some virtual assistants and it's been hit or miss, and I wish I were a little bit better at screening. I've had some good ones for sure, but it felt like less of what I did and more of luck. And then the bad ones I could see, there were probably some earlier flags I should have caught. But do you feel like I want to talk a little bit about your, like looking back, you've exited, you've sold, you've been very successful. Now you're on your second or your next step of your journey. If you had to do everything you did in your previous business over again, is there anything you'd do differently? Would you have taken anything in a different direction? Would you have tried to shorten the cycle and exit earlier? I don't know. What do you think?
So I wouldn't do anything differently as to what's already been done, right? But what I can tell you is I am doing things differently this time from a go-to-market standpoint.
Okay.
And what I found towards the end of Payment Pilot was when we really hit our stride, we weren't trying to be everything to everyone. Right. Obviously, with credit card processing, if you're a business, then and you take credit cards, then you're technically a prospect for me. But what we did was we found a very, very small niche inside of another niche. So it was like a micro niche. And that's what we hit. We just targeted it. And that's all we did. That's the only language we spoke, the only types of people we were talking to. We had a one offer for everybody, one pricing and one, value add essentially. And that was once we started focusing exclusively on one lane, we got into a very small lane and stayed there and didn't deviate from it at all. That was when things really started to take off. Same thing right now with what we're doing. And, oddly enough, I came into this business thinking that I was going to be everything to everybody. And then it took me about a year and a half to be like, oh, you know what, man, I'm doing it again. So switched over into, shifted over into this, and it's been great. We work with franchises and we just crush it for them. It's such a great product to bring to them. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Do you feel like businesses are you running into this over and over again, that businesses, founders, are they misunderstanding global talent? Are there key things that, like lessons that you teach and reteach?
Yeah. The funny one, and I don't know how funny it is, if that's the word I want to use, but this happens with newer people or people that are new to hiring. They think that they're going to get this person for like $4 an hour, right? That will run their entire business, right? There's a lot of stuff that you read online, and obviously not everything you read online is true. And there are some other companies out there that set expectations really high. And there are people out there that are very, very talented and that can do a whole lot in your business. And obviously, they're not at the $4 an hour price point. I mean, if you can find, I don't know, but just getting people's expectations realistic again is because they think that I had a call the other day with a guy, and he had like 3 full pages of things that this person was to do, and I was like, this is the work of like 5 people, and not even exaggerating. I'm like, this is an entire team. And he's like, no, no, no. I think one person can do this. And I was like, dude, like, and so that's one of the biggest things we see is, just want to make sure everybody's expectations are kind of in alignment before we move forward, or we don't move forward. But yeah, just make sure everybody's starting off on the right foot with expectations that are realistic.
Yeah. And I like to hear you say that. I feel like you're in it and you're sourcing these people and helping build these processes. I think managing expectations, I think, is really key. That tell us. So you are obviously well read and you think a lot about business and strategy. What are some of the books, or do you have any recommended podcasts? Anything? I'd love to talk about things you write and present. Tell us a little bit about what you're reading, what you find really valuable.
I like books. Right now, I'm into communication style books to help me to improve the way that I speak to people, being able to listen. There's a book, and I left it out on the counter I think a week ago, and my mother-in-law was over, and that's like, man, she probably thinks I'm so arrogant now. There's this book, I forget who wrote it, but it's called Surrounded by Idiots, and it's just it doesn't the title's strange, and he's got a couple of other books, and it's all they're all similar, surrounded by whatever. But it's just a book about communication and being able to communicate with people who don't communicate with you. Like, obviously, I think most entrepreneurs are, typically there's a bit of neurodivergence with them in terms of we don't think like other people. For the most part, we're usually very tolerant of risk, and where most normal people would say, you know what, no, 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 I don't want to do that, right? Some of your entrepreneurs will be like, no, 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 yeah, let's go, let's do that. Right. And so being able to communicate, but then also books on efficiency, right? I still think that there's a great book before I got into this industry called Who Not How. Great book. And that's basically like, instead of going out and trying to learn how to do all these skills yourself, go find somebody who already does know how to do them and hire them, right? Great example would be, if I wanted to be a video editor or a web designer, I could spend 6 months learning how to, code pages, or I don't even know language, right? But learning how to do that. And I would still be probably below average or at best mediocre. I just took 6 months of my life to learn a skill that I'm not good at. However, right, I could take, I don't know, you could go on, you find a freelancer for that, and for a couple $1,000, yeah, and in a week, right, you can have the same thing accomplished. So Who Not How is a great book. Also, there's a book by Dan Martell. He's one of my coaches. It's called Buy Back Your Time. I'm not sure if you've ever read that book. In my opinion, best business book ever written. Right? And that's a big one. But most books are fluff in terms of it's conceptual. Hey, here's an idea, right, and you figure it out on your own how to actually make this a reality. Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, cool. This. I just wasted 2 days. But he wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time, and it is tactical. It is completely so. Here's the concept. Here's the lesson. Here's the step by step. Here's the homework assignment. Go do it. And each chapter, is that way. And it's not difficult. It's very, very easy. When I read that book, and this is, Reed, I'm not exaggerating at all. I called my team after I was done and I said, we are completely revamping the way that we onboard clients, and we're going to follow this book.
Wow.
So we had a method before that I think was pretty effective. I read this and I was like, that method sucks. We're doing this now. And like almost immediately switched it over. And so, yeah, it's an incredible book.
I'm writing this down. I love the passion.
You do a good job selling it, don't I?
Yeah, you do actually. Yeah. Do you have an affiliate link or something? I don't know. But in any case, Chris, you have a lot of really interesting experience, and I appreciate the insight, having successfully exited yourself. And that's a really important perspective. If you're going to work with a vendor of any kind, somebody that's actually been through it and hit the high point for a founder and the exit, that's fantastic. So congrats on that, and congrats on this current venture. And if people would like to work with you, Chris, where can they find you? Where are the best places?
Yeah, easiest place to find me is on Instagram. I'm always dicking around on there. I am Chris Kille is my handle on there. And to your point, just a second ago, I think one of the things that really separates myself is I've actually done it, right? I didn't just read about this somewhere. Like I took this concept that was, I didn't invent it, but I got very good at it, used it for myself, and then said, you know what, hey, I'm going to start a business, doing this. It wasn't until after I built the business that I started doing this. But the other thing is most people, they still think they hear VA. They're not really sure. Is this Alexa? Is this somebody that's So I actually created a guide that is the ultimate guide to virtual assistants, right? It's not a sales pitch. It's not a webinar. It's nothing. It's like literally everything that you could and would need to know about the industry, all the way from, the types of people, what they can do, how much they cost, where do you find them, even about the Filipino culture. It's right. It's a very, very comprehensive, and I give that out to people who, to spread awareness about it. So if you guys follow me and then DM me the word read, what I do is I'll send it over to you, and and that's at no charge.
Awesome. I will take you up on that. That's fantastic.
All right.
Thanks so much, Chris. I'm going to include this information in the show notes. Refer to those, and please reach out to Chris. Obviously, you've got some great resources and I think you'd be a great asset to help a founder really get the freedom. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.